The following story occurred 9 years ago in the summer of 2005. I live in Georgia and went to the University of Georgia. My girlfriend, now wife, lived in Atlanta, about a 65-mile drive from Athens, Georgia. The highway that takes you to Athens from Atlanta is a 2-lane highway called 316. This information is important for the story. It was a Sunday evening, and I had spent the weekend in Atlanta and was now driving back to Athens. In the summer, there were very few cars on the road on Sunday evenings. I was driving a black BMW SUV and was just cruising along, listening to some tunes. I literally had seen no cars for miles as I approached one of the traffic lights along 316. The light was red, and I came to a stop alongside an older Mustang. It looked like an 80s 5-liter model and was black with a ragtop. The windows of the Mustang were tinted. I really did not give the car another thought. I just sat there and waited for the light to turn green. The light turned green, and the Mustang suddenly sped off with a squeal of the tires, as if the driver floored the engine from an idle position. The car sped off far in front of me. I was a bit surprised, but just thought, meh, another redneck, who cares? The car sped out of sight and out of mind. I continued to drive along and was back in chill mode again when suddenly a car with high beams on appeared directly behind me. I thought, what the hell? I quickly realized it was the same Mustang from earlier. The car had been waiting on the side of the highway for me. I looked down to make sure my phone was charging in case I needed it. Then the Mustang switched lanes and flew up beside me, kept pace for a few seconds, and then took off in front of me. The car switched lanes to be in my lane and braked suddenly, bringing the car to a halt. I swerved into the other lane and sped up. The Mustang sped up beside me and started to swerve at me, trying to knock me off the road. It then sped up again and tried the braking maneuver once again. At this point, I was freaking out. I am a 6'3", 220-pound male who works out regularly. I don't easily get scared. In this situation, size did not matter. I noted the license plate on the car and grabbed my cell phone, but as I did, the car was suddenly beside me again and started swerving at me. As I jerked my wheel to the side, my phone flew out of my hands into the passenger side door pocket. The Mustang was then behind me, flashing its high beams right on my bumper, speeding up, slowing down, blaring its horn, and swerving side to side. Then suddenly, it sped out of sight and was gone. I collected myself, took a deep breath, and drove the remaining 10 minutes to the turnoff that led to the road to the town where my house is located. I made a quick decision to drive to the police station located in my town on my way home to file a report. I had the license plate number memorized and had been mentally reciting it over and over again. As I turned off the road to the town where I live, bright lights filled my rearview mirror again, and the Mustang was behind me again. It sped past me, turned down another road, and was gone. I arrived at the police station and gave them the license plate number. This is a fairly small police station, and I believe there was only one officer working. He told me it was probably somebody mistaking me for someone else. He ran the plate number and told me the owner of the license plate number was deceased. He stated it was probably a stolen license plate. Completely freaked out, I finished filing the police report and headed home. I was at home on the phone with my girlfriend when suddenly someone beat loudly on my garage door several times, followed by a squeal of tires. I never saw a car, but I called the cops immediately. The cops came and nothing was ever found. I didn't sleep for several nights, but that was the end of it. When I was 19 years old, I worked at a summer camp as a counselor and lived at the camp on weekends when there were no children present. Weekends weren't scary per se, but because everyone was more or less doing their own thing, they could put us a little on edge, being more or less alone. One Friday night, I went into town with 2 other young women who worked at the camp. We got back very late in the evening. 2 of us were staying in the lodge, which is one of the first buildings you see as you enter the camp, and the other girl was staying in one of the cabins, which were about half a mile away, most of that walk through the woods. We begged her to just stay in the lodge with us that night because it was late. She refused. We asked her to at least let us take the truck up there so she didn't have to walk. She liked walking at night, and the thought of the walk didn't scare her. We finally relented and let her go, asking her to call us when she got back to her cabin. 15 minutes after she left, we saw lights in the driveway to the camp. It was a camper. My friend told me not to worry about it. There was a group coming to use the camp facilities for a week the next evening, and one of their leaders always brought her camper. She tended to arrive at weird times, so the fact that she was there at 3 a.m. was nothing. 10 to 15 minutes later, we heard someone at the door of the lodge trying to get in. Our first order of business was to make sure it was locked up tight, as there were a lot fewer people staying at the camp this particular weekend. Thinking that it was her, we went to the door, where we saw a man standing there trying to get in, not knocking, simply trying to get in. Swallowing our fear, we went to the screen door, opening the non-screen door but leaving the screen door locked, and asked him what he was doing. He told us he was looking for the Eagles campground. We actually got people arriving at the camp asking about that a lot, so we started to give him directions. At which point he said, "I can't hear you. Open the door." To be clear, we were talking through a screen. There was no way his hearing was obstructed by the screen. He was just trying to get in. We told him we couldn't do that, and that if he tried to get in again, we'd call the police. We repeated the directions. He left. We relocked the door and checked to make sure all of the other doors were still locked. Content that the lodge was secure, we armed ourselves with butcher knives because we were still a little scared. We heard him start up his camper. We looked outside and noticed that he was driving into the camp rather than leaving. We tried calling the third girl, who was undoubtedly alone, but we got no answer. We tried calling our boss, but still no answer. It was at that point that we realized that if he had come from the direction he said he had, he would have driven right by the Eagles campground, so why was he here? We debated calling 911 but decided against it. We kept trying to call the girl from our group but never reached her. We never saw him leave the camp, but in the morning our friend was okay, and we couldn't find his camper, so he must have left. I am in university right now, but staying with my parents at their house for the summer. I was hanging out with one of my friends, and we decided to go to a party. I met this guy around my age. We were talking and having fun, but it was nothing too serious, or so I thought. We exchanged phone numbers. We hung out a couple of times, but he became incredibly clingy right from the start, so I decided to distance myself in the hope that he would get the hint and back off. Well, he didn't. When I stopped responding, he sent me over 100 messages, with each message becoming increasingly more aggressive as time went on. Keep in mind it had been less than 2 weeks since we first met. I finally responded and told him he needed to chill out. He appeared to calm down a bit after I responded, but then he asked for a phone call. I agreed, and we talked for a while. He told me that he couldn't stop thinking about me, that I was the best thing that ever happened to him, just a bunch of stuff that is way too intense to say to someone you barely know. I tried to let him down gently, reminding him that I was only home for the summer and wasn't looking for anything serious beyond a fling, but this only made him angrier. He started yelling at me, insulting me, a complete 180 from what he had been saying mere minutes ago. Then, all of a sudden, the phone went silent. After a pause, he said in a quiet voice, "You had better get ready because I am coming over for you," and then he hung up the phone. This was very frightening because he knew my parents were out of town for the week, and that I was staying at their house alone. However, he didn't know where my parents' house was because I was always the one driving, and he didn't know my friend either, so I thought he had no way of figuring it out, since, again, I'm normally living at school in another state. Regardless, I locked all the doors and shut the blinds just in case. After a while, maybe an hour or so, I fell asleep. When I woke up, I looked at my phone and saw a notification on my lock screen. It was from the Ring app, indicating there had been movement on my parents' camera. It was him. He had something in his hand. When he noticed the camera, however, he left. I immediately blocked him on everything and reported the incident. I have no idea what he planned to do once he got here. It was terrifying to realize that he had come over when I was asleep and defenseless and completely unaware of his presence. As I would later find out, he was able to get my address from my phone number. Apparently, he Googled it, and it returned my dad's name as the owner of the phone number, along with my parents' address. Since I am on my parents' phone plan, I guess it shows up that I still live here. This revelation was horrifying, as I never knew my phone number could reveal my home address. I am still extremely upset that this kind of private information is on the internet for anyone to find. Please learn from my mistakes and do not give anyone your phone number unless you trust them. I found out that you can get a free Google Voice number to text and call people, and that number can't be traced back to you so easily. My advice is to use a disposable number for anyone you're talking to that you meet informally or online. I still can't sleep at night. Hopefully, this never happens to anyone else.